Does the 4% withdrawal rule work in a down bear market? Let's look at some numbers. These are the actual returns for the S&P 500 for the last 100 years. How would the 4% rule have worked, for example, during the Depression years? Or maybe the 1970s, we had 2 down years in a row. Or more recently, the 2000s, we had 3 down years in a row. For 100 years worth of data, those are the 3 or 4 times that we had more than 1 down year in a row. 1929 to 1932, 1939 to 1941, 73 and 74, and this one right here. Those are the only times in the last 100 years we had consecutive down markets. How would the 4% rule have worked in that scenario? Well, I've got somebody who wants me to run numbers for them, so let's see how that would work out. He says he has $2 million saved up. Let's see what the 4% rule would be. I didn't run this ahead of time, so I'm just kind of guessing here. Okay, looks like just about 67.50. So let's that'd be 6,750 a month. Would be 81,000 a year, which would be the 4% rule, 4.05 in this case. Now we want to take into account inflation, so we're going to increase this by 3% a year each year to try to keep up with inflation. So let's see how many times the last 100 years this 4% rule would have worked. This is calculating from 1924 on, and you'll see that 2% of the time in the last 100 years the 4% rule would not have worked. What years? 1929 and 1930. What's going on in 1929 and 1930? You had 4 down years, then another one, then another one. There wasn't time for the market to come back, even though we had some really good returns. It got knocked down so far because of this 81,000 you're taking out. That's why people like to do an asset allocation, so you don't leave it all in the stock market. Now let's just do a 70-30% split. 70% staying in the S&P 500, 30% going into a cash reserve account. So when the market's going down, you're taking this 81,000 and so on out of this instead of that. So the market has a chance to come back. If you don't want to knock this down any farther than it's already been knocked down for these 4 years. Let's go ahead and run the numbers there and see if it makes any difference during the Depression years. Those were the only years you would have run out of money. Still, 1929 was such a horrible year because you had these 4 down years and then all these other ones. But 1930, you actually would have had money left after 20 years, but not after 30 years. You can see it right here. Run out of money in 1929, run out of money in less than 20, and obviously in less than 30. And this one, running less than 30. But 2% of the time, you would have been just fine with a 70-30 split. Every other scenario, even these are the actual right here, these are the actual returns. Let's see what the 2000s, how low that might have gotten after using the 4% rule. Let's go down here to 2000. This is what we do this channel. We run all kinds of numbers for you. 1999, fine. 2000, you'd still have 508,000. Most of it would be gone. 75% of it would be gone, but there hasn't been 30 years to run the numbers. But it'd be getting close, so you really have to be careful with the 4% rule when you have 3 or 4 down years in a row, but every other scenario, no problem. But I got a request for somebody that has $2 million, because here's one thing we haven't taken into account. We haven't taken into account Social Security, so I'm going to run that for this individual. They say they have $2 million, and they're going to get Social Security in the 8th year. They're going to get $3,700 a month, and in the 10th year, the spouse's Social Security is going to kick in. That's $1,700 a month. So you're going down through here, but we also want to take out. Said he wants to know he's got expenses, planned expenses of $10,000, but he's going to get a pension of, I believe it was $275. We're just going to do this one right here. Let's go and update the numbers now. With this scenario, we're up to 5.85%. Withdrawal rate initially, but then Social Security is going to kick in and that's going to knock this down. You can see it going down through this 9,750, increasing by 3% a year. And in the 8th year, this 3,700 kicks in, and in the 10th year, this 1,700 kicks in. So let's see how it might work out over the last 100 years, given this scenario. How many times you run out of money? Look at this, 1929 and 1930. They're getting kind of familiar, isn't it? Because that was such a horrible time, but most bear markets don't last for multi-years, multiple consecutive years. And even if they do, if you don't catch them initially, you're going to be okay. Like these are 1924 numbers. You can see after 10 years, after 15 and 20 years, how much money you would have. It's not till you get down and you can see these, as these returns get closer and closer to where you first retire, that's when these numbers begin to get problematic. 1927, fine. 1928, fine. You can see they're getting a little bit less, but look at 1929. Boom, you're out of money. Why? Because you had these 4 down years. There wasn't enough time for the market to come back because you ran your funds dry. Even using a cash reserve account, you knocked that down so far that after the 5th year, you were down to these kind of amounts, and you eventually just would run out of money. But that's the two times in the last 100 years that you would have run out of money. 1931 with 2 down years, no problem. Look at these numbers. 20 million or 1.5 million after 20 years, 3.3 million. Again, let's look at 1973. Why do I pick 1973? Because we had another 2 down years, and we'll also look at the year 2000 to see how it would work out. Again, this is having Social Security kick in to these amounts in the 8th year and the 10th year, withdrawing 9,750. They said 10,000 a month, but he has a pension of 275, which I'm just running at 250. Let's go ahead and see what these numbers show. Let's see here, 1973. Again, this is what we can do this channel on all kinds of different numbers. 1973 and 74, even though you had 2 down years, you had no problem because the market came back so nicely in 75 and 76, and then you had a good run in the 1980s. 1974 would be the same thing. How about the year 2000? That's the other time that you might have some issues. 1998, no problem. After 20 years, 1.81 million. 1999, 819,000 after 20 years. How about the year 2000? You're down to 342,000 when you started with 2 million. So you're getting kind of low with the year 2000. How about 2001? 2001, you're going back up. Why? Because the market's coming back. So you had the 3 down years. That's when you're going to have a problem with a multi-year bear market. But most every other scenario, you're going to be just fine with the 4% rule. We were running it he wanted me to run it at 10,000 minus the pension. So this is actually a 5.85% withdrawal. But in most cases, we saw that the 4% rule is a safe withdrawal rule, even in a bear market, except the horrible bear market of 1929 and 1930 and the Depression years. But every other scenario, your money would last with the 4% rule, and if you start counting Social Security kicking in, you're going to have no problem. And again, we were doing a 70-30 split. We could change this to 60-40 and run some other numbers, but this gives you a general idea. That's what we do in this channel. We run numbers for people, and I just wanted to show you the 4% rule. In a bear market, is almost always okay, unless you have something like the Depression type returns where you had 4 down years in a row. But that's what we do on this channel. We run numbers. Please consider subscribing. Please share this channel with others. Let them know there's a channel out there that are run numbers for them, both in the accumulation stage, and here we see what happens in the withdrawal stage, especially when we're looking at the 4% rule. Thanks for watching.